In this video, we are building a full-stack authentication app complete with a professional UI/UX that mirrors real-world production quality. When the page loads, this is the initial view. On the left is the sign-in section, and on the right, users can switch to registration by clicking Sign Up. If you already have an account, simply click Sign In. Clicking Launch Sign In without entering credentials turns the input fields red and displays the message. Email and password are required. So first, let's click Sign Up to register a new account. Clicking into an input field highlights it in yellow. We'll enter John as the full name, john@gmail.com as the email, and 123456 as the password. The password visibility can be toggled using the Show/Hide button. After clicking Create Account, a smooth circular loading animation plays, a polished UX touch. Upon successful registration, the app automatically redirects to the login page. Now sign in using john@gmail.com and 123456. After another smooth animation, we land on the dashboard, which greets us with, "Welcome back, John." The dashboard also features a clean, professional UI. Inspecting local storage, you can see a token has been stored, a long string of random characters. Clicking Sign Out removes the token from local storage and redirects back to the auth page. Manually entering /dashboard in the URL after signing out redirects straight back to the auth page. Now visiting MongoDB and refreshing the database, the new user, John, appears with his email, a hashed password, and creation and update timestamps. This is our complete full-stack application in action. Before we start building, let's walk through the front-end flow. The app begins at the registration page. After a successful registration, the user is redirected to the login page. On a successful login, a token is saved in local storage, granting access to the protected dashboard. That is the complete workflow. One important note before we begin the project. If you have any questions or doubts about the code, check the GitHub repository. It includes documentation covering key features, architecture, technologies used across the front end and back end, folder structure, and the full API reference for authentication endpoints and response patterns. Reading through the documentation before starting the build is strongly recommended. It will save you a lot of time. Let's begin. First, open VS Code and create a new folder named Backend. Then open a new terminal, type cd backend, and press Enter. Run the command npm init-y and press Enter. A package.json file will now appear inside the backend folder. Next, in the terminal, type npm install bcryptjs, cores.nv express JSON Web Token Mongoose and nodemon, then press Enter. Once installation is complete, all these packages, bcrypt, cores, .nv express, JSON Web Token, mongoose, and nodemon, will appear under dependencies in the package.json file. The node_modules folder will also appear at this point. Now create a file named server.js inside the backend folder. Open the package.json file and replace index.js in the main field with server.js, since this will be our main entry point. Below that, set type to module, as we are using ES module syntax rather than common JS. Inside the script section, add a start script with the value nodeserver.js. Below that, add a dev script with the value nodemon./server.js. Next, inside the backend folder, create the following subfolders: config, controllers, middleware, models, routes, and utils. After creating these folders, also create a .env file. Then, inside the config folder, create db.js. In the controllers folder, create authcontroller.js and usercontroller.js. In the middleware folder, create authmiddleware.js and errormiddleware.js. Inside the models folder, create user.js. In the routes folder, create auth, route.js, and userroute.js. And in the utils folder, create async_handler.js and generate token.js. The folder structure is now complete. Close all open files except server.js. Begin in server.js by importing Express from Express. After importing Express, call const app equals express parents. Then inside app.getParents, pass a / as the path string. Take request and response as parameters, and inside the callback, write res.send with the string API is running. Below that, write app.listen with the port variable and an arrow function that console logs server running on port, using a template literal with the port variable. Now open the .env file. Inside it, add port set to 5000, then mongo_URI on the next line, and JWT_secret below that. For the secret value, enter subscribe channel. Next, visit the MongoDB website. Sign in using a Google account. It may take a moment to load. Click the project button at the top and select View All Projects. Click View All Projects once more, then name your project. Here it is named Cosmo Auth. Click the Next button, then click Create Project. Once created, click Create Cluster and select the free plan. Name the cluster Cluster 1 and click Create Deployment. A Connect to Cluster 1 dialog will appear, displaying a username and password. Copy both and save them somewhere. They will be needed shortly. Then click Create Database User, followed by Choose a Connection Method, and then Drivers. The Mongo_URI connection string will appear below. Copy it and paste it as the value for Mongo_URI inside the .env file. Navigate to Network Access. No changes are needed there for now. Go back and click Browse Collections. After a brief load, the Cluster 1 folder will appear. All data will be stored here. Nothing has been sent yet, but records will appear once we start making requests. Return to VS Code and open the db.js file inside the config folder. Inside db.js, first import Mongoose, then define an arrow function. Const connect db equals async parents equals greater than. Inside this function, add a try catch block. In the catch, accept the error parameter. In the try block, write const con equals await mongoose.connect parents and pass process.env.mongo_URI as the argument. This value comes from our environment file. Then log a message using a template literal. MongoDB connected, followed by con.connection.host inside the template expression. In the catch block, write console.error with the string database connection failed, followed by error.message on the next line. Below that, call process.exit open parenthesis 1 close parenthesis. Finally, export connect db at the bottom. Now open the server.js file. Import .env and connect db at the top, then call .env.config parents and connect db parents below the imports. Above app.listen, define const port equals process.env.port or 5000. Make sure to include the .js extension when importing db.js. Write db.js, not just db. Open the terminal and run npm rundev. The server is now running correctly on port 5000, and MongoDB has connected successfully. Next, open the user.js file inside the models folder and import mongoose. Define const user schema equals new mongoose.schema parents and pass an object as its argument. Inside the object, add a username field with type string, required set to true, unique set to true, trim set to true, and min length set to 3. Below that, add an email field with type string, required set to true, unique set to true, lowercase set to true, trim set to true, and a match validator using the appropriate email regex. Include the validation message. Please enter a valid email address. Below that, add a password field with type string, required set to true, min length set to 6, and select set to false. At the bottom of the schema object, add timestamp set to true. Now close this file and open async_handler.js inside the utils folder. In async_handler.js, define an arrow function. const async handler equals open parenthesis fn close parenthesis arrow. Inside it, return a function that takes request, response, and next as parameters and returns promise.resolve, open parenthesis fn, open parenthesis request, res, next close parenthesis dot catch open parenthesis, next close parenthesis. Then export async handler. Close this file and open generate token.js. Import JWT from JSON Web Token, then define an arrow function. Const generate token equals open parenthesis user close parenthesis arrow. Inside, return JWT.signParents with an object containing ID as user, ._ID, email as user.email, and username as user.username. passProcess.env.jwt_secret as the secret, and pass an options object with expire in set to 7 days. Export generate token at the bottom. Close this file and open authcontroller.js. Import bcrypt, user, generate token, and async handler at the top. Below that, define export const register, user equals async handler, open parenthesis, async open parenthesis, rekey comma, res close parenthesis arrow. Inside, destructure username, email, and password from request.body. Add an if statement. If any of these fields are missing, set response.status open parenthesis, 400 close parenthesis, and throw a new error with the message, all fields are required. Below that, define const existing user equals await user. Find one open parenthesis close parenthesis, and pass an object using the dollar or operator with an array containing 2 condition objects, one for email and one for username. If existing user is found, throw an appropriate already exists error. Below that, define const hashed password equals await, bcrypt.hash, open parenthesis password comma 10 close parenthesis. Then define const user equals await, user.createParents with an object containing username, email, and password set to hashed password. Below that, define const token equals generate token, open parenthesis user close parenthesis. Then send a response with res.status open parenthesis 2, 0, 1 close parenthesis, .json parents containing success set to true, message set to user registered successfully, and a data object with token and a user object containing ID as user._ID, username as user.username, and email as user.email. At the bottom of the file, define export const login, user equals async handler, open parenthesis, async, open parenthesis, reca, comma, res close parenthesis arrow. Destructure email and password from request.body. If email or password is missing, set response.status, open parenthesis, 400 close parenthesis, and throw a new error with the message, email and password are required. Below that, define const user equals await user. Find one open parenthesis, close parenthesis with the email condition, chained with select open parenthesis, quote plus password quote, close parenthesis to include the password field. If no user is found, set response.status, open parenthesis 401, close parenthesis, and throw a new error with the message quote, invalid email or password quote. Below that, define const is match equals await, bcrypt.compare open parenthesis, password comma user dot password close parenthesis. If the passwords do not match, set response.status open parenthesis 401 close parenthesis and throw a new error with the same message, invalid email or password. Then define const token equals generate token user. Send the response with res.status of 200 and a JSON body containing success set to true, message set to login successful, and a data object with token and a user object containing ID as user, ._ID, username as user.username, and email as user.email. Now close this file and open usercontroller.js. Import async handler from the utils folder, including the .js extension. Define export const get user profile equals async handler, open parenthesis async open parenthesis rec comma, res close parenthesis arrow. Inside, send res.status, open parenthesis 200, close parenthesis .json parents with success set to true, message set to quote, user profile, fetched successfully quote, and a data object containing ID as request.user, ._ID, username as request.user.username, email as request.user.email, and created it as request.user.createdAt. Close this file and open auth_middleware.js from the middleware folder. Import JWT and import user. Then define export const protect equals async. Open parenthesis rec comma res comma next close parenthesis equals greater than. Inside, add a try catch block with error in the catch parameter. In the try block, declare let token, add an if statement. If request.headers.authorization exists and request.headers.authorization.starts with open parenthesis quote, bearer quote, close parenthesis is true, then set token equal to request.headers.authorization.split. Quote space quote, open bracket 1 close bracket. Below that, define const decoded equals jwt.verify open parenthesis token, comma process.env.jwt underscore secret, close parenthesis. This value comes from the env file. Then define const user equals await user, dot find, by ID open parenthesis decoded dot ID, close parenthesis chained with dot select, open parenthesis quote dash password quote, close parenthesis to exclude the password field. If no user is found, return response.status open parenthesis 401, close parenthesis .json parens with success set to false, and message set to not authorized, user not found. Otherwise, set request.user equal to user, then call next parens. In the else block, return response.status open paren 401, close paren.json parens with success set to false and message set to not authorized, no token provided. In the catch block, return response.status open parenthesis 401, close parenthesis .json parens with success set to false and message set to not authorized, token failed. Close this file and open error middleware.js. Define a function named error middleware with parameters er, rec, res, and next. Inside, write let status code equals res dot status code equals 200 question mark 500 colon res dot status code. Then send res dot status open parenthesis status code close parenthesis dot json parens with success set to false and message set to error dot message or internal server error. Export error middleware at the bottom. Now open authroute.js and import express. Import register user and login user from the auth controller. Define const router equals express.router parens. Add router.post, open paren quote slash register quote comma. Register user close paren and router.post, open paren quote slash login quote, comma login user close paren. Export the router. Open user routes.js. Import express, import protect from the middleware, and import get user profile from the controller. Define const router equals express.router parens. Add router.getOpenParen quote slash profile quote comma, protect comma get user profile close paren. Export the router. Now open server.js. Import 4 additional items: auth routes, user routes, error middleware, and CORS. After the connect DB call, add app.use open parenthesis cores parens close parenthesis. Below that, add app.use open parenthesis express.json parens close parenthesis. Then add app.use open parenthesis quote slash API slash auth quote comma, auth routes close parenthesis, and app.use open parenthesis quote slash API slash users quote comma user routes close parenthesis. Below that, add a 404 handler. App.use, open parenthesis, recu comma, res, close parenthesis, arrow res, dot status. 404 close parenthesis, dot JSON. Open brace success colon, false comma, message colon, quote, route not found. Finally, add app.use, opens error, middleware close at the bottom. At this point, the server has crashed. Open the terminal to review the errors. Open user.js. It is missing an export. Above the export line, define const user equals mongoose.model, open parenthesis, quote user, quote comma user schema, close parenthesis, then update the export to export default user. Check the terminal again. Another error has appeared. Open auth routes where the import of register user and login user from auth controller is missing the .js file extension. Add .js to the import path. The server is now running successfully and MongoDB is connected. One more issue to fix. Open auth middleware.js and locate the dot starts with call. The method was misspelled as starts with a double T. Remove the extra T to correct it to starts with. This is now fixed and the server is working perfectly. Our backend code is almost complete. Now open Postman. If it is not installed, install the Postman extension first. Enter the following URL, http://localhost:5000/API/auth/register. Set the method to post. Click on Body, then select Raw and change the format from text to JSON, since we are sending JSON data. Inside the request body, add a JSON object with the key username set to John, email set to john@gmail.com, and password set to 123456. Click the Send button. The user has been registered successfully and a token has been returned in the response. Now replace register in the URL with login and remove the username field from the body. Click Send. The response shows login successful along with the token. Copy the token. Click on the Authorization tab. Set the type to bearer token and paste the copied token into the token field. Replace the URL with http://localhost:5000/API/users/profile. Change the method from post to get, then click Send. The response shows user profile fetched successfully along with the user data. Now visit MongoDB and refresh the collections view. The user record is visible. Username is John, email is john@gmail.com, and the password is stored as a hashed string. The created at and updated at timestamps are also present. Our backend code is now complete. Next, we will begin building the front end. In the front end, begin by creating a folder named Frontend. Open the terminal. In the terminal, run the command cd frontend. Inside the frontend folder, type the following npm create vt at latest. Select OK to confirm. After selecting OK, choose React under Select a Framework. Select JavaScript as the variant. When prompted, select Install with npm and Start Now and choose Yes. After a few seconds, the npm packages are fully installed. Copy the localhost :5173 URL and open it in any browser. A basic counter app appears and is running correctly. Now open a new terminal. Run the command cd frontend. After navigating into the front-end folder, run npm install Axios React-icons React-router-DOM Lucide-React Tailwind CSS. All of these packages will be installed in a single command. Type the command exactly as shown and press enter. Installation completes in about 9 seconds. Once installed, open the front-end folder. All the project files are now present. First, delete the app.css file. Open app.jsx and remove the default counter code. Next, create a folder inside src named Components. Create another folder named Context. Create another folder named Pages. Finally, create a folder named Services. Inside the Components folder, create a file named protectedroute.jsx. Inside context, create a file named authcontext.jsx. Inside pages, create two files, the first named auth.jsx and the second named dashboard.jsx. Inside the services folder, create a file named api.js. The folder structure and file setup are now complete. Close all open files, leaving only api.js open. Begin by importing Axios at the top. Then write const api equals Axios, dot create open parenthesis open brace base, URL colon quote, http colon slash slash localhost colon, 5000 slash API quote. Below that, add api.interceptors.request.use, open parenthesis config. Inside the interceptor, const token equals local storage.getItem, open parenthesis quote token quote, close parenthesis semicolon. Below that, add an if statement. The condition is if open parenthesis token, close parenthesis open brace, config, dot headers dot, authorization, bearer dollar. Below the if block, return the config. At the very bottom, write api.interceptors.response.use, open parenthesis, response close parenthesis, arrow response comma, error close parenthesis, arrow. Inside the error handler, if open parenthesis error dot response, ampersand error dot response dot status triple equals 401, console.log, unauthorized, token may be invalid. This message will appear in the browser console. Below that, add a return promise.reject error. Finally, export API at the bottom of the file. The api.js code is now complete. Close api.js and open the authcontext.jsx file inside the context folder. In this file, import create context, use state, and use effect, along with the API instance. Then write export const auth context equals create context. Define the provider. Export const auth provider equals children now as an arrow function. Set up a user state with set user initialized to null. Set up a token state with set token retrieving its initial value from local storage.getItem, open parenthesis quote token quote close parenthesis, or defaulting to null. Set up a loading state with set loading initialized to true. Below these states, add a use effect hook. Inside it, define an asynchronous arrow function named loadUser. Inside loadUser, add an if statement that checks whether the token exists. If it does, add a try block, and inside it, define const res equals await API dot this quote slash user slash profile quote close parenthesis. Then call set user open parenthesis res dot data close parenthesis. In the catch block, handle the error by calling the logout function. Below the if block, call set loading open parenthesis false close parenthesis. After that, call the loadUser function and add token to the useEffect dependency array. Below the useEffect, define an asynchronous arrow function named login, accepting email and password as parameters. Inside it, define const res equals await API dot post open parenthesis quote slash auth slash login quote comma open brace email comma password close brace close parenthesis. Then extract the token and user from res.data.data.token and res.data.data.user respectively. Call local storage.setItem open parenthesis quote token quote comma token close parenthesis to persist the token. Then call set token open parenthesis token close parenthesis and set user open parenthesis user close parenthesis. Below the login function, define an asynchronous arrow function named register, accepting username, email, and password as parameters. Inside it, define const res equals await API dot post open parenthesis quote slash auth slash register quote comma open brace username comma email comma password close brace close parenthesis. Below the register function, return res.data. After returning res.data, define an arrow function named logout. Inside it, call local storage.removeItem open parenthesis quote token quote close parenthesis. Then call setUser open parenthesis null close parenthesis and setToken open parenthesis null close parenthesis. Finally, return the auth context.provider with a value containing user, token, loading, login, register, and logout. Place open brace children close brace inside the auth context.provider and close it. The auth context.jsx code is now complete. Close auth context.jsx and open protected route.jsx inside the components folder. Import use context, navigate, and auth context at the top. Define const protected route equals children, close brace. Inside, extract user and loading from use. Context open parenthesis, auth context, close parenthesis. Add an if statement. If loading is true, return a paragraph element with the text loading. Add another if statement. If no user exists, return a navigate component redirecting to /auth. Otherwise, return children. Below the function export protected route. Close this file and open auth.jsx inside the pages folder. Import use state, use context, auth context, use navigate, some React icons including the Google and Apple icons, and the image asset. Define an arrow function named auth. Inside, extract login and register from use context, auth context. Call use navigate and store it in a constant named navigate. Define an isLogin state with setIsLogin initialized to true. Define a username state with setUsername initialized to an empty string. Define an email state with setEmail initialized to an empty string. Define a password state with setPassword initialized to an empty string. Define a loading state with setLoading initialized to false. Define an error state with setError initialized to an empty string. Define a showPassword state with setShowPassword initialized to false. Below these states, define an asynchronous function named handleSubmit, accepting e as a parameter. Inside, call e.preventDefault. In the try block, call setLoading true and setError to reset the error state. Then add await new promise. Open parenthesis. Open parenthesis, resolve, close parenthesis. Arrow set timeout, open parenthesis, resolve comma, 1000 close parenthesis to introduce a 1-second delay. Add an if statement. If isLogin is true, call await login open parenthesis email, comma password, close parenthesis. In the else block, call await register open parenthesis username, comma email, comma password, close parenthesis. Below the if-else block, navigate to /dashboard. In the catch block, call setError, error.response data message, or something went wrong. In the finally block, call setLoading false. Return a main element containing a div, which includes an img element with src set to the imported image and alt set to image. Skip a div and create another one below it. Inside, nest another div. Inside that, add the SciForecast icon from React Icons. Below it, add an h2 tag with the text Cosmo and a p tag with the text Authentication Portal. Skip another div and create one below it. Inside, add a span containing a button with the text Sign In and an on-click handler. When clicked, toggle is set login to the opposite value and clear the error, email, password, and username states. Duplicate this button below it and change the text from Sign In to Sign Up. Create a form element with an onSubmit handler set to handle submit. Inside the form, add a p tag to display the error state. Below that, inside curly brackets, if is login is false, return a div. Inside the div, add a label with the text full name, followed by an input of type text with its value bound to the username state. On change, update the username state with e.target.value. Set the placeholder to Niall Armstrong or any preferred name. After the closing curly bracket, create another div with a label for email. Set the input type to email, bind its value to the email state, and update it with e.target.value on change. Set the placeholder to you@universe.com. Duplicate this input and replace the label text with password. Wrap the input inside a div below the label. Change the input type to a conditional. If show password is true, set the type to text, otherwise password. Bind the value to the password state and update it on change. Use the password masking symbol as the placeholder. Inside a span, add a conditional. If show password is true, display hide, otherwise show. Add an on-click handler to toggle the show password state. After skipping two divs, add a conditional inside curly brackets. If is login is true, return a div containing a span and a checkbox input with the ID checkbox. Below it, add a label for the checkbox with the text Remember Me. Skip the label in div, then add another span with the text Forgot Password. Outside the curly bracket, add a submit button that is disabled while loading is true. Inside the button, add a conditional. If loading is true, return an empty div. If is login is true, display launch sign in. Otherwise, display create account. Below the submit button, create a div containing 3 spans. The first and last spans are empty, and the middle span contains a conditional. If his login is true, display or continue with. Otherwise, or sign up with. Skip a div and create another containing 2 spans. The first span holds the Google icon from React Icons, and the second holds the Apple icon with the label Apple. Skip this div and create a span below it. Then below the span, create a div. Inside the div, add a span with a conditional. If his login is true, display don't have an account. Otherwise, display already have an account. Below that span, add another span with an on-click handler that toggles the is login state and clears the error, email, password, and username states. Inside the span, add a conditional. If is login is true, display sign up. Otherwise, display sign in. Below that, export auth as the default export. The auth.jsx code is now complete. Close this file and open dashboard.jsx. Import use context, use state, auth context, use navigate, and the necessary React icons. Define an arrow function named dashboard. Inside, extract user and log out from use context, auth context. Call useNavigate and store it in a constant named navigate. Set up an active tab state using useState with overview as the default value. Define an arrow function named handleLogout. Inside, call the logout function, then navigate to /auth. Define an array named navItems containing objects with ID, label, and icon properties. For the first item, set the ID to Overview and the icon to High Outline View Grid. Fill in the remaining 3 objects accordingly. After completing the navItems array, return a div. Inside, add an aside element and inside that, another div. The first div contains the Sci in forecast icon followed by a span with the text Cosmo. Skip a div and create another below it. Inside, use the map method on nav items to render a button for each item. Set the button's key to item.id and add an on-click handler that sets the active tab to item.id. Each button contains two spans, the first for item.icon and the second for item.label. Below the map, add a logout button with an on-click handler that calls handle logout. Inside the button, include the high outline logout icon and a span with the text sign out. After the aside element, add a main element containing a header. Inside the header, add a div with an h1 tag displaying welcome back, followed by a span that conditionally renders user?username or the fallback text commander. Below the h1, add a p tag with the text system status and a span with the text online. Skip a div and create another. Inside it, nest another div, and inside that, a third div containing the SciReact icon. After skipping a div, add an h3 tag with the text frontend core, followed by a p tag displaying React 19.0.0. Duplicate this div. In the duplicate, replace the SciReact icon with SciTailwind CSS. Update the h3 text to styling engine, and change the p tag to Tailwind v4. In the third duplicated div, replace the icon with SciFramer, update the h3 text to Motion System, and change the p tag to GSAP and Framer. After skipping two divs, add a section containing a div. Inside the div, add an h2 tag with the text Cosmo OS. Below the h2, add a p tag with appropriate descriptive text. Skip one div, create another empty div, then export dashboard as the default export. The dashboard.jsx code is now complete. Now open main.jsx, import auth provider, and inside strict mode, wrap the app component inside auth provider. The main.jsx code is complete. Open app.jsx and import browser router as router, routes, route, and navigate from react-router-dom. Below that, import auth, dashboard, and protected route. Inside the app function, return router containing routes. Inside routes, define a route with path/ and an element that navigates to /auth. Add another route with path/auth rendering the auth component. Below that, define a route with path/dashboard, and inside the element, render the dashboard component wrapped in protected route. App.jsx is now complete. Checking the browser preview, the image and form text are visible, but no styles have been applied yet. Styling will be added using Tailwind CSS. Open vite.config.js, import Tailwind CSS, and add it to the plugins array. In index.css, remove the default styles and replace them with the custom styles. The styles are available on GitHub. The link is in the description. To keep this video concise, the styling code will not be explained in detail. The focus remains on the front-end and back-end logic. In auth.jsx, apply the styles by copying and pasting from the GitHub file. With styling complete, the login form in the preview looks polished and professional. Open MongoDB and confirm the existing data sent via Postman for john@gmail.com. To test the login, enter john@gmail.com and the password 123456. Then click Launch Sign In. After a 1-second loading animation, the login succeeds and redirects to the dashboard. The dashboard displays a professional and well-structured UI. Clicking Sign Out redirects back to the auth page. Attempting to access /dashboard directly in the URL redirects to the auth page, confirming that protected route is working correctly since the user is signed out. Clicking Sign Up reveals the registration options. That wraps up this video. If you found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Deployment was not covered in this video, but if you run into any issues, drop a comment and I will help. Although this project has been deployed, it will not be shown here in order to keep the video concise. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.